Yeah, we're live. 7:08. I'm a little bit late. And I'm rhyming already. I am in fuego. How's everybody doing tonight? I just got back. First thing before we get going is a big shout out to Oliver, the gentleman that won the Nova. I was over visiting him today. And when I say visiting, I mean working on my truck. Thanks, Oliver, for the help. We managed to do wheel bearings and brakes and rotors and not a tie rod end, one of the steering components. Front and rear shocks, rotated the tires. What else? Oh, bleed the brakes. Check the codes. That's something else. A few other things. So we got a lot of stuff done today, which was very cool. And it's always cool to be working with a guy who's sharp and knows what he's doing. And you don't have to tell him what to do, and hopefully he doesn't have to tell you what to do, and you get to swap stories and learn things about each other, and talk about car stuff. I see all car guy stuff, and spending time with another car guy. That's always good. So thank you very much, Oliver, for your help with the truck, getting it ready for the long trip, hopefully out to go do some more car guy stuff, Dodge 2.2 turbo stuff, which I'm very excited about. Very excited about having a turbo daily driver. Very, very excited about that. I'm all about the boost, and having one on a daily basis would just be awesome. Especially getting it to go through the things that we needed to get it to go through, and jumping through all those hoops and finally having success. Fingers crossed. We want all that to happen. So Oliver is a big part of what I'm hoping is eventual success, but just getting the truck running and getting it working right and having it be safe and being able to tow and get all that stuff done is awesome. So tonight, also after that, now we're going to talk about the if you guys haven't seen the thumbnail is a 2000, I think that's an 06 Ford GT, red on white. It's a car that I owned for a very brief time, 6 or 7 months, might have been 8 months. It was months. It was not years. Thought that I could afford it at the time, couldn't, long story. But it was very, very cool because I got to see, I bought the car from a showroom, from a dealer showroom back east. It had 3 or 4 miles on it or whatever. Not that it was without its problems, because there were. But the cool thing was to see a big semi truck roll down our street and then offload this car with the big ramp and stuff, and all your neighbors are out watching. Because where we were living, that car was probably cost more than the houses did. But and it was very, very cool because it was all wrapped up like a new one and stuff. So the deal. It's very, very, very exciting for my wife and 5, 6. My oldest son was probably just born. He might have been a year old or something. So that was very cool. Fast forward after driving it, doing some things to it, because back then it was, it's just a car. So obviously we had need to make it faster, put a pulley on it and a blower and all those upgrades that you do to it. But unfortunately for me, when they shipped the car without water in the intercooler or coolant. There was nothing in there. They didn't fill it, I think, from Ford, or Shelby or Roush or whoever was responsible for doing those cars. That wasn't filled up. And so we drove it around because I didn't check that. So I drove it around and thought, man, this thing is really not that powerful. And then we realized, because the computer was taking all the timing and stuff. And but we got that. We obviously filled that back up, and it worked fine. It wasn't leaking or anything. There was nothing anywhere in the engine compartment. They just didn't do it. It wasn't one of the things that they filled when this car went down the assembly line. So we fixed that, put a blower upgrade on it and a pulley and the snout and all, and a tune and an exhaust, I think, on it and stuff. And so it was like a lot faster than it was. It was already plenty fast, but it was a lot faster than it was. And so I'm going to put up a poll for tonight. The 2005 06 Ford GT is better. Okay, so yeah, yes or no? The 2005-2006 Ford GT is better looking than the new one, than the new version of that, the EcoBoost V6 twin turbo thing. So you guys can let me know what you think. So, and then subsequently, after selling it and realizing that I couldn't afford a supercar, I was not a super, I wasn't making supercar money or even car money really. But after selling it, we all know what happened to the price after that, because it's the same thing for anything with me. After I sell it, right when I'm trying to sell it is when it's at its lowest selling price. And then right after that is when it's at its highest selling price. So after I get rid of it, that's when the price goes up. And we did. We see that you see them skyrocket. I mean, I think that they were $300,000 or $400,000 cars or something after. I think that they got up that high. They were big money cars. So I should have kept it and I would have made money, even though I would have been hemorrhaging money during the process. It would have been hard, but you know, it's all about long term, and it's all about looking backwards. It's all our 2020 vision, looking back at stuff and being able to see that. But who knew? I just knew that it was an amazing car, and every time I walked out and looked at it, I was just, you know, I was just in awe and knew that I didn't deserve a car like that, or certainly couldn't afford that. So that car went away, but it was one of the ones that went away. So I want you guys to let me know what car did you guys have that you had maybe back in the day. And I've had a couple of these, not like that one, but I've had a couple of cars that I wish I still had. One of them is the Sprint Turbo, and unfortunately for me, that one was stolen from me. But I do wish that I still had that car. I wish I had that exact car, because we had been through a lot together. We'd set records together and stuff. And so, you know, we had bonded. And so I wish I still had that one. There are other ones too. I had a guy was telling me, I was working at a leasing company, and a guy came to work there and said, yeah, my dad's got an old Corvette and he wants to get rid of it because it's just sitting. And I said, well, what year it is? And he said, I don't know. It's got a big motor in it, and it's got 3 carburetors on it. So I'm thinking, oh, it's a tri-power Corvette. That's a big block. And so he said, yeah, he just wanted, like, I don't know, $2,500 for or something. I'm like, well, any Corvette, especially a tri-power Corvette, I don't care if it's a 78 that has a big block and a tri-power setup in it. It's worth that kind of money. So I went over and looked at it, and it is a 68, 427 tri-power car. It was not a 4-speed car, though. It was an automatic, which is okay. And I also don't think it had the original motor in it. I think it still had a 427. It either had a 427 or a 454, but it had the original tri-power that came with that car, because the car was originally a tri-power car. It had the little placard on the the console and stuff. And so, and we looked up the VIN numbers, and it was originally a tri-power car. It was red with black, so it was, it had all the right things. And the guy said, yeah, he just wants to, he told me to sell it. He just wants to get rid of it. And he said, what does he want for it? He said, $2,500. And I went over, and I didn't have $2,500 at the time. So I went over and borrowed it somebody, probably from my parents or somebody. Said, look, we have to get this car because it's, it's worth 2 or 3 or 10 or 50 times this amount or whatever. And I never even moved the car. I bought the car, got the pink slip from them, called like a Corvette dealership and said, hey, I have this 69 tri-power Corvette. Are you interested? They said, yes, we will be right over. And they came over and bought it. And I think I doubled my money or did something. We made a good bit of money on it or whatever. What would conceivably be a good bit of money for back in the day. But again, I wish that that's one that I had. I actually wish that that was one that would have been cool to drive around in, because it a big black Corvette. And I know that a lot of guys don't, but I actually like the 68, 69, 70, 71. I like that body style much more than I like the earlier mid-year Corvettes. I know that they sell for more. I know that they're worth more and stuff, but I don't care about that. Those don't speak to me. And that later Coke bottle style one does. I'm particularly fond of a 70 LT1 Corvette. I would rather have a big block, because if you're going to have a Corvette, it's, why not have a big block? but I like the way that they look. So again, that's one that got away for me. So let me know. I'm gonna try to see what your guys' things are here. Wish I had my first Supra. Yeah, that's a good one. 70 Dodge Challenger. I do like those a lot. 2001 Buick Regal GS L67. Nice. 676 Le Mans. Oh, 5064 GT standing mile. Yeah, that's Mahovic's deal. They went 300. That's an impressive thing. Idler arm and bracket. That's the other thing. Thank you. Thank you, Oliver. T70 Toyota Corona Mark II Coupe. I do like. Celica Fastback. 05 SRT4. 50 trim. All the bells and whistles. Front mount. Bigger injectors. 68 Charger RT. 65 Fastback Mustang. I do like those. And I had a 66, but mine was GT Coupe. And I wish that I had the Fastback. Although I was all about trunks back then because I had an 88 5-liter notchback, and I liked those a lot better than I liked the GT versions. And I was like, real Mustangs have trunks. You guys, why would you have a Fastback? And looking back now, I was probably foolish. I do like the Fastbacks better because I would do a Shelby tribute car. 68 Chevy Custom Coupe SS Impala Body 427. Those are cool, the full-size ones. Eric, so you're the no brigade. My favorite vehicle I ever owned was an 89 Plymouth Voyager SE Turbo. Yes, that is a good one. Oliver and I were just talking about that. Who was 63.5 Galaxy? My brother had the 390 horse version of the Vet 69. Yep. 71 Dodge Demon, Plymouth Duster. Lots of good ones. 93 Civic Hatch, B20. Nice. 98 Camaro, LS1 T56. Panteras are also good. '79 Little Red Express truck. Hey, for the late '70s, that is a classic. Phyllis, don't laugh. 91 Ford Festiva with the 5-speed. I'm actually a big Festiva fan, and the Fiesta. I like little hatchbacks. 70 Chevelle 454 4-speed. Yeah, if it's an LS6, even if it's not an LS6, it's still a good. That's still a good one. That's kind of the car that I want now. 70 or 71, could be a 72 also. 4-speed 396 375 horse Nova. That would be a good one. Oh, draft notice, yeah. 98 Viper GTS. My wife is a big fan of those. She likes the blue cars with the white stripes. I myself like the Viper GTS way more than I like the Viper convertible. 66 big block 4-speed. I didn't see her GTO. I'm gonna scroll back and see which one it was. I'm looking. Oh, 68.5 GTO. There you go. Was it a 68.5? Was it a 389 or a 400? I think that's a 400, right? It's bringing tears to my eyes. The Little Road Express truck was Unfortunately, the 78 was the one to have because it didn't have cats on it. 90 Fox GT was my dream car. 66 GT 421, 3.2s is nice. Dodge A100s, I do like those too. '68 big block tri-power Corvette convertible crashed in '71. '68 big block tri-power Corvette convertible crashed in '71. I'm restoring it. Open the 26,000-mile motor to find 3 aftermarket pistons. Wow. Just to say that the older GT is a V8, which is necessary. I mean, there's no denying that the twin turbo stuff makes good power, and there's no denying that that's a good looking car. The later one is. I just like the earlier one better. I own an 06 with the 830 wheel horsepower. Is it a supercharged version, or did you go with turbos on it? '66 was the last year for the 389s, okay? And GT should have been a 427. 63 Max Wedge Plymouth. 87 Acadian scooter. Did you ever deal with the baby vet, the Opel GT? I haven't, but I've seen and talked to lots of people that have them, and I really, really like them. I think that they're cool. It needs a better motor in it, but some sort of cool like twin cam, like a 4.8 GE or something. Somebody tells me Richard's partial to the 05 and 06 vote yes. I don't get to vote, but yes, I would vote yes. Richard, what came in the bubble style in 94 and 95? A 302 was in it. That's the SN95 stuff. And then in 96, they switched over to the 4.6. 69 Camaro, 70 Eldorado, 500. Those are both good. 79 383 LeBaron Coupe. Oh, he ran. So Katie's boosted. Had a friend of mine as a family, as a child that raced an Opel GT with a nasty small block in it. That would be a handful. 64.5 Valiant Fastback, solid lifter 283. Vanishing Point made the 70 Challenger. Yeah, Kowalski. But it is a good looking car. There's no doubt about it. And I like the TA Challengers and the AAR Cudas. Those, even though they're not big blocks, they're tri-power 340s, but they speak to me. Don, Richard, what was your first car? My first car was a 1970 and a half split bumper Rally Sport base engine Camaro. It was a 2-barrel with a 3-speed turbo 350 and a 308 gear. Cam, what's the deal with the Ford GT? We're talking about cars that got away. We're talking about our favorite cars that we had, that we sold, that we wish that we still had, and that's one of them. You'll never see a Gen 2 Ford GT doing 300 miles an hour with the block installed heads that actually came in the car. Yeah, I don't think that EcoBoost would be able to do what they did on that bigger motor. 67 Ford Bronco. Yep, those are big money now. Every split bumper Camaro, they are nice. Michael got me into the Wixom plant where they worked and built the Ford GT. It was awesome. They looked like scientists. They probably all had like white scrubs on and stuff. Southern Alberta, Canada's in the house. Late 90s as a teen. Missed out on HK GTS Monero. I've had it for $5,000. Richard, I just found Wiseco pistons on sale. 12.5 to 1 from a K24 turbo and 94 pump. They are Fords worth trying at 8 psi. I don't think that that's a good idea. Not because you can't run higher compression with boost if you have enough octane and intercooling and all that. In fact, racers do it a lot. What I don't like about those high dome pistons is I don't like the flame travel. I don't think that they help as much as they hurt. Hot mess, you got a notification. Good. 1973 340 B5 Blue Challenger. But I have a 73 Formula 400 now, so you don't feel bad. That's also a good car. Through 8 years, always wanted to shift into the third at the quarter mile. My car, and I was talking to Oliver about this. My car was a base 2-barrel, and I never even put headers on it when I owned it. I did put a 4-barrel. I started out with an SB2P intake and a 450 Economaster because I traded a guy that had that on. He had a 307 Camaro. His was a 72 or 73. And he didn't want the 4-barrel anymore. He wanted a 2-barrel. And I had a 2-barrel. I said, look, I will totally trade. I'll totally make that trade, even though I know nothing about putting intake manifolds on or anything like that. We're just going to do it. And so we did it. And that car, after we got it working right, hooked up all the vacuum lines correctly, that car would run right at 90 in the quarter. I didn't ever take it to a drag strip, but I was lucky that somebody went out and marked off a quarter mile out on the road, out on a country road, on the outskirts of town, and we could do our thing right there. Or other people could, because I never did, because I was always home studying. But I had heard that people had done that and could find out how fast their car would go in the quarter mile. I love this story. Nick's Garage, he's a Mopar guy and also into the Vanishing Point movie and 1970s Challengers. The one the movie supposedly had a supercharger as he outran a 150-mile-an-hour chopper. So I'm thinking you mean chopper like helicopter and not ape hangers and that kind of chopper, because 150-mile-an-hour one of those choppers, like a Harley Davidson chopper, that'd be a tall order. But if it's not stock, if it's a 440 and a modified 440, it'd be fairly easy to get that car to go more than 150 miles an hour. And also, since it's a movie, they could make it show whatever they want. Katie, I did a video yesterday on my dad's Project Stash. There's a beautiful 64 Catalina 389. Oh, nice. I forgot he owned. You might want to check it out. Yeah, I definitely want to check it out. Goodman, disappointed that the new GT has a V6 instead of a twin turbo V10. Yeah, they needed something. The car is exciting enough looking at it stuff, and it looks like it should have something fairly exotic. And I just don't think as capable as we've seen it is. I mean, it's raced and done well, but it's just not like supercar guys are not. Oh, mine. You know, when they're all standing around drinking their lattes or whatever and talking about how cool their cars are. What is yours? Oh, mine's a V12. Mine's a V10. Mine's a twin turbo V10. What's yours? Mine's a V6. You're just, no matter how capable it is and how many races it's won, you're just not going to get the like wow factor there, and that's part of the deal. Quick question: if you buy a GST, okay, is that a question? 63 Chevy 2, I like those. Has anyone built a 302 out of a 96 and newer Vortec motor? I haven't done that yet. I'm wanting to do that out of a Gen 2 LT1. You can also do it out of instead use a 350 Vortec motor though. Do you think a tapered intake runner like an LS8 much in power throughout the RPMs, skewing resistance? That's not what it's doing. It's not skewing resistance versus a straight tube like a TPI. Taper is usually accelerating the airflow. It's also changing other things. It's changing inertial ram. So there's more to the equation than that. Never forget my 84, 85 Dodge Daytona Turbo Z. Of course, it was a helicopter. Nick's Garage is one of the most epic guys on the internet. It's super nice. I like Nick's stuff. I think he does cool stuff. Richard, what do I do about axles? You're gonna probably have to have some made, I would imagine. NorCal guy just acquired one of my dream cars recently and hopefully will never let it get away. 427 Cobra replica. Maine. Oh, I'll see you at Merchant, Maine one day. Are you in this area? It says NorCal, but turning gasoline into noise with the benefit of horsepower. We used to give the Harley guys a hard time because I used to ride motorcycles, Interceptor and a Ninja and a GSXR and stuff, and even those, even a like a half-liter bike, 500 or 600, especially the 750. I mean, they were a lot faster than Harley Davidsons. But in their defense, lots of people like them. Oh, at the end of the movie, they smashed a Camaro because they didn't want to smash the Challenger. The new Ford GT would have been great with a twin turbo 5-liter. Yeah, a Coyote-based motor even would have been plenty powerful. Plymouth Fury, and Turbo Voodoo. Why are electric valve openers not used yet? They've been used for a long time, actually. The problem is that it's hard to get them to open and close at higher engine speeds. And so what they did was, at least early on, they had spring helpers to get them because the solenoids, it took a lot of current to drive the solenoids to get them to open and close the valves. Nick's Garage kind of made a boo-boo testing carb versus EFI. He tested the carb fine-tuned and the EFI after letting it self-learn. Doesn't seem like a fair test. But having tested carburetors versus EFI, I already know what happens there. I like when Nick's Garage was testing what's his name? Uncle Tony's 318 debacle. We have an incredibly fast twin turbo 67 Camaro, but it is big money. They are. NorCal, you're in Dixon. Cool. That's where my son was playing soccer for 4 or 5 years. We were there all the time. Maybe a Buell was faster than the regular Harley Davidsons, or weren't the Evos? Didn't they make more power? Weren't they designed by Porsche? I'm sure Dan's going to chime in on this. ME 109 in World War II had a nice variable supercharger. That was good. Lunar Outlaws Garage. I didn't even know the whole story about that. I know that there was some finger pointing going on. I think that the 318 blew up, right? The V-Rod? Okay. Richard, can you gap rings for boost run NA? Yes, you can. Your motor won't know the difference. Fuels are just regular air-cooled Harley engines. I thought that they were, but I thought that the Porsche designed engines made the Harleys quite a bit faster. Because everything Porsche does makes stuff faster. Let's see how our poll is doing. 2005 to 6 Ford GT is better looking than the new one. 74% saying yes. The V-Rod, okay. Question: putting together a 6-liter LQ4 LS and purchase a low mileage set of 799 heads, would you recommend milling them or leaving them alone? Sloppy stage 2 cam, carb intake, nothing fancy. If you mill them, you will make more power. But if you leave them alone, it will also run well. I'm a middle child that used to people make up stories and blame them for. I survived the 0 oil pressure. A short runner goes from tube to big area plenum. At low RPM, the long tapered runner comes into play. Higher RPM air is pulled from the large area of the runner. I think it'd be an interesting test. You need to send me a drawing of what you're talking about. People have done dual runner intake manifolds. That seems to be what you're describing. Lots of factory motors have that already. So if that's what you're talking about, that's been done a lot. If it's something different that you're talking about, please send me a drawing and let me know what it is. Foreign. I'm thinking the 318 in my stand might be one of those that might blow up engines. It sounds like it, from what you're describing, it sounds like it's like perfect in every way. Dan, you think that the third string Porsche engineers designed the V-Rods? Maybe they were VW engineers. Lunar Outlaw Garage made both Uncle Tony and Nick's garage look bad because he never performed a proper teardown and inspection to learn later that it had a mismatched bearing and a crank. But who assembled the motors? Who did that? Who is the guy that put the motors together? Who selected the parts and put the motor together? That's the guy that's responsible for a bearing. What casting numbers do I want to get for my 5.3? You can get any casting number. I don't know what you're doing with it, but any casting number will work. It's going to come with a 706 or an 862. You can put a 317 on it if you want a lower compression. You could put a 241 or any of the weird 5.7 heads that almost nobody uses, or a 243 or a 799, a cathedral head. Heavy Chevys, I refuse to vote. Chevy for life. Can't look at another. You should have been here last night when we had our discussion. Well, maybe you just won't look at Fords. Okay. Looking at a Husqvarna. Well, Eagle heads off the Gen 3 Hemis work on an older one. Yes, they'll raise the compression. I think that they're a smaller chamber, but they flow a lot more. Jason, would a 5.3 with 10 pounds be okay for a daily driver? Yeah, people do that all the time. Best spark plugs for spraying 100 to 200 shots. So we normally go down a range or two, a heat range or two when we're running lots of nitrous on stuff. But NGK has good stuff. We've run Denso Iridiums. We run Champion Copper Core stuff. As long as the plug gap's low, which we do when we're running nitrous on something. Can you put LS3 heads on a 5.3? No, because the bore is too small. Although I'm going to do it because I'm going to notch the bore and be super cool. Be the only one to ever have done this. Probably not. LS. Oh, you have an LS4 in your Ion. Is that what you have? Okay. So now I need to go back and find out what your question was. Okay. If you have an LS4, you already have good heads on it. You already have 243 or 799 heads on it. They put a really bad intake manifold on that motor, but they put good heads on it. And I think that that's an aluminum motor too. Lunar, I didn't know that you were involved in that. Maybe I didn't put one and one together and get two. How much of the extra power on the Eagle heads is the heads? Well, if you look at the flow rate of the heads, they go up like 80 or 90 CFM. So the gain that you would get from the heads, irrespective of the intake, is going to be a function of what you put underneath it. You mean if those heads flow 330 CFM, you need to have a 600 horsepower motor under that to take advantage of them. If you got a 400 horsepower motor, the head swap's not going to do you much good. I think Randy did run a Tesla Plaid. I don't know if it was this year, though. Celine S7. I've seen those up close. Daryl, are those fuel economy numbers? Are those metric or something? Imperial or something? Seems pretty high for a 4.6. I've driven those a lot. No matter what happened, you're living the dyno dream. Yes. Your info on the 275 CFM Boss 302 cylinder head was an eye opener. That's actually a good. Those are good heads. I mean, those Boss things were the most powerful thing Ford made up until, without a blower on it. I think up until the Coyote stuff. On the LS4, we'll be running a single GT45. Yeah, the LS4 is problematic for trying to use in a rear-wheel drive car because the people have mentioned the accessories, the way that they mount the starter, and it has all kinds of problems. But and from a power standpoint, it still is a good choice. Jack, is there a math formula to find theoretical max horsepower from head CFM? Yes, the accepted one right now is the maximum flow. So if you have 300 CFM cylinder head, it flows 300 CFM, you multiply it by 2 on a V8. So those heads can support 600 horsepower. Now, here's the fine print. If you don't have the rest of the motor to go along with that, the head can support that power. But if you don't have the right cam and compression and displacement and intake manifold and headers, et cetera, just having the heads isn't enough to make that power. It will support that, but you have to have the rest of the stuff to make that power. Here's the other caveat. Here's the other fine print. You can make more than that. Lots of guys, we're being botted. I got to take care of this. And you're out. So the other part to that is that you can make more than that. 2 is the number we normally use because it's easy math. But we've done, and I've done as much as 2.4, and other guys have probably done even more than that. So if everything else is right, like dry sump, ultra high compression, thin rings, all of the things that you do to a race motor, then you can get it to make more than that number. But 2 is a really pretty good deal for a V8. Yeah, the crank flange is different on the LS4. Spam the bots. Naked. Isn't that the kind of Ford modular block? Isn't that the one that everybody wants? The naked block? LS4 crankshaft, shorter on both ends. Can't talk peak specific output without talking EFI 460s. Nice. So it's 1 horsepower per CFM on a 4-cylinder. Yeah, if it's on a 4-cylinder and it flows 300 CFM, you can make 300 horsepower. Now, actually, on a 4-cylinder, you're probably going to do better than that, because if it's 300 CFM and it's a 4-valve head and it's a Honda, you're probably going to do better than 2 horse or more than 1 horsepower. Yep. So 550 horsepower in Racing Boss 302. It could support that. The thing is that there are other things. The peak flow number gives you an idea, but the rest of the flow range is going to help determine how much power you make. So just because it flows that number, and the other thing that could happen is, let's say that it flows that number at 700 lift. If you have a 550 lift cam, you're not getting that number. Do you verify time by looking at the ground strap of the spark plug, or do you just run it? I don't know what you mean by do we just run it. We verify timing by TDCing the motor normally, and then we mark the timing depending on which motor it is. But we usually TDC the motor. We verify the timing is accurate. The 0 point basically is accurate. And then we verify that the timing, if it's an EFI motor and we're programming timing into it, we verify with a timing light that when we say run 20 degrees, that it shows 20 degrees, and then we try it at 30, and if it shows 30, then we know that all of that's working together. I don't verify that with a spark plug, because what we do when we're doing it with the engine and doing it with power, that tells us better than the spark plug will. Because if we start out at a low number and then start adding timing, and we keep making power, we keep adding timing, and at some point it's not going to make any more power. And then we know that that's how much timing it is. It doesn't matter what the number is, and actually doesn't matter what the spark plug is telling us. The dyno and the engine have already told us, look, this is how much timing I like. If you subscribe to a certain head manufacturer, that smaller head ports flowing as well as larger head ports make more power under boost because of velocity. I don't think that that statement is universal. It's not universally accurate. I think that there's something to be said about a smaller port flowing more air, or flowing as much air as a bigger port, and it has the potential NA to make more power. I think it certainly has a couple of other things it can be going for. I think it has the potential to make more average power. And I also think that it probably will work better. It almost certainly will work better at part throttle. Whether or not it makes more power under boost is not a thing. So you don't read spark plugs. We do read spark plugs, but we don't read spark plugs to tell us what the air fuel is or what the timing is. How much power do you think I'm losing timing running log exhaust manifolds for my turbo compared to a ram equal length manifold? It goes from 1 3/4 to 3 inch from a 4-cylinder, from cylinder 4 to cylinder 1. I don't know. That's hard to say. I want a header to be like worth a lot of power on a turbo application, but I just haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen that transpire, and so I need to do more testing. What do you think about the 54-459 cam? It's a big cam for a 5.3. It will make a lot of power, but it is big, and it's not something I would suggest for a daily driver. And I wouldn't use it on a turbo application unless you're trying to make 1,500 or 2,000 horsepower. I would pick a smaller one for a turbo 5.3. Yes, the dyno tells us timing. It tells us how much timing the motor wants. It does that with power. Going from a stock ported E6 on an SVO to a stainless log gains quite a bit. So I imagine it's true for the Chrysler head. Yeah, Dan, that's always the argument, is that his point was at some point improving the exhaust with turbos is picking nits when you can increase the boost by 1/10 of a pound and make just as much power. I'm sure he's talking about headers. And that's the thing, is how much do you want to spend and how much is it worth? Just do an instructional video on LSA and lift and duration, and you're taking all that. That's going to be a better conversation actually with Brian Tooley. I have the things that I believe about camshafts, and other cam manufacturers have different things, and they look at it differently, which I think is awesome. I don't think that what I'm doing, the way that I apply myself with the dyno, is the ultimate way. It's just one way. I can have fairly good success, and so can other people doing other things. I think you should listen to lots of different views on that. The thing is that with camshafts is people want, what does LSA do? Well, it depends. What does lift do? It depends. And you already know what duration does, because it depends. That they're all interrelated, and so there's so much going on that having a discussion about, hey, if you add lift, it does this, or you add duration, it does this, or you change LSA, it does this. That's that's like the very tip of the iceberg. And unfortunately, that's what people want. They want, hey, if you add lift, it adds torque, it doesn't do anything to power. If you add duration, it adds power, it doesn't do anything to torque. If you add LSA, it makes it idle better or extends the RPM range. Those are the simple things that they want, but that's not what happens all the time. 66 El Camino with a 396 and a Muncie 4-speed. That my dad had a 67 with a 375 horse 396 with a 4-speed, and it was quite entertaining. Plymouth Roadrunner 383. BTR Stage 1 truck cam for a 5.3. That's a good one. That's a good choice. Yeah, I don't think you're leaving 50 horsepower on the table with your headers on your Honda. I would doubt that. Travis, ignore me. I was referencing the logbooks. I think since the turbo is the biggest restriction, a long tube header just can't scavenge like it would with a free-flowing exhaust. There might be something to that. Also, the header is definitely going to it's going to shed more heat because of its length and because of its composition than like a cast manifold will. It's going to be longer. The route for the exhaust to get to the turbo is going to be longer. So there's an argument there. But is that longer route actually better? Is there some scavenging taking place? That's the thing. I can tell you that every real Formula One, IndyCar, race motor has a header on it. It does not have a log manifold on it. So they probably are looking for that nth degree. Brian, you need to rephrase your question, please. LQ9 block and crank, are the LQ9 rods and flat top pistons a drop in? Yes, but you can't drop them in without rebalancing it. What do those guys that don't have a dyno do? Well, lucky for you, after we run stuff on the dyno, like if I run an LS and go, okay, we've increased the timing to where it stops making power. Well, what is that number? We go in and give you that number on an LS. It's 29 or 30 degrees of total timing. And then a lot of times I give you, we started at 22 down here or 15 or whatever the number was at wide open throttle. And so you can at least plot your timing curve at wide open throttle. I don't usually give the whole spread because I don't have drivability stuff, but I can tell you what that is, and that at least can give you a really good start. And quite honestly, if you are starting at, let's say we're starting at 20 and ending at 29, running it from 2,500 RPM to 6,500 RPM, and we have a transition going up to usually from about 4,500 or 5,000 on out, the timing is the same. And it's less below that. It's less below the torque peak. But quite honestly, if your number instead of 30 or 29 is 27 or 25, it's still going to run really well, and you're only going to be down this much power. It's not going to be very much. It's not going to be 20 or 30, not on an NA motor. So even if you miss it by a little bit, you won't be down, and you'll also be safer. Spark plugs can tell you if you had some bad injectors. We normally flow our injectors on the injector machine before we run them, just to make sure, especially if they've been sitting for a long time, and especially like I normally do, run E85 through them. We try to run pump gas after we run the E85 to flush everything out, but it's always a good idea to check them. What he was referring to, and I know the answer to this, but what he was referring to is the timing mark on the spark plug. Yes, I know what that is, and I know that people read that, and you can do that, and that works. Will a stock A9L work good with the super mild 351? Yes, it will, as long as you can program it. But you can't just use that computer and do all the stuff to a 351 with a cam and heads and intake manifold, and have that A9L computer with it in its stock form work. That computer was designed for a different injector size and a different power output, and definitely a different camshaft. If it's a mass air car, it'll be a little more forgiving, or a mass air meter, a little more forgiving than it will be if it's a speed density. Yeah, an Offenhauser engine was a long time ago. Look at a modern Formula One motor, or modern IndyCar motor, and they're all tubular headers. Camaro that he has worth money now. Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it was a base Camaro, but still a split bumper Camaro was worth money now. Phoenix, Arizona's in the house. I'm going to shoot Eric an email asking if he can flow bench an intake manifold. I have a fab idea. The LSJ's bottleneck for making power are the Laminova cores and the factory intercooler. Can't you put a different intercooler on it? Have you done any videos with a Ford FE engine? I have not. I've been there when Robert Pond was running an aluminum 427 stroker. I think it was a 482, and helped him with that, but I haven't run one. You want to see a budget Offie build? I will only do an Offie if I can use a long tube header on it. Admiral, anyone that says no should be lined up for execution by ticks. Not tickles. Ticks would be better. That'd be a tough way to go. I think the whole oil cooking in the turbo is a conspiracy to sell turbo timers. Also, I mean, I know that this this shut off after thing is the thing that they're talking about, but the reality is that keeping the center section cooled during running is also good for the turbo. Your budget 930 is almost done. This budget should be capitalized, I think. I don't know who's placing a turbo low enough that gravity doesn't drain the oil out the engine after it's shut off. The remote turbos will do that. Rear mount stuff won't obviously do that. Would you be confident that the timing you get on the dyno would be the same as you would run in a car? It's not. It's not in any way, shape, or form. It is if you are running at the track and you cool the motor off before you run it, then you can run that kind of timing. And if you run the octane that we run, you can run that kind of timing. But driving around in a daily driver with underhood heat and stuff, they usually run less timing on the chassis dyno than we do on the engine dyno. Mach 1, see, this is what I like to hear. The 0506 Ford GT is way nicer than the new, not just a little bit more, way nicer. Laminate cores are used in the factory intake. I know, but you just change the intake and put a real intercooler on it. If it's a restriction, put a big air to water on it. Your contact email on the Westech website. No, I don't. I don't work for Westech, so that's not me. I'll put it up here. There's my email address. Dan, your budget list includes a V1650 Rolls Merlin. Wow. Larry, there is a rule of thumb for fuel pressure affecting injector output. Look up RC Engineering. They have the formula for that. I think it, and I would imagine that Wallace Racing has that stuff too. I know we do. Thank you. Speaking of air to water, we still need to test the chili bomb. Absolutely, we do. Have any insight on spark plug heat ranges? Yeah, we run a 9 or a 10 on high boost stuff. And plug gaps we run down at 18 or 19 for any kind of turbo thing. And we don't just run factory replacements. That's way too hot of a plug for boost. That being said, I have run motors off from the wrecking yard with the factory plugs in them at the factory gap, and we ran those at low boost before I changed it, but it did work. Yes, AOL, because it's the best. Plus, I got all those free minutes. I haven't even used them all up yet. Alan, I still have some of those discs. I showed them on one of the live feeds. I found some when we were cleaning, when we were moving. Richard, nobody makes an aftermarket intake for forced induction with compound boost. Okay. Did you send me a picture of what all of this nonsense was? I want to see it. And nonsense, when I say that, I mean that in the most kind, nurturing, supportive sort of way, because it sounds awesome. So we're going to close our poll that the 4GT is in every way better than the 0506 is in every way, not just better looking, but in every way far superior to the new one. 78% saying yes, 22% saying no. How much power was Bob Lazar making? Well, obviously 115, right? Somebody already beat me to it. Do you know the company that uses marine LSs? I do not. Yeah, Carlo, I showed running all those different turbos on the K24, and we ran a bunch of them on V8s and stuff too. And that's the thing; it will work. People online will roast you and say, "Ah, oh, that's too small," or "You have too much back pressure." But what happens when you put it on there and put exhaust to it and put the discharge going into the motor? What happens? It makes boost and it makes power and it does what it's supposed to. I don't know that that's the one that I would choose to run Le Mans, but it does work. So, Admiral, you want to see a cross ram? a cross ram, high ram style manifold. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, sometimes you. That's why we. I think that was Napoleon that said that we're going to show up and see what happens. If he didn't, he should have. Somebody said that, and that's good advice. That's why we put stuff on the dyno and try it, because you don't. Everybody tells you that it doesn't work right off the bat. Obviously, that's a good enough reason to try it. But even if nobody was saying anything about it and something you just came up with, you should try it and see what happens. Richard, speaking of marine, did you know that the intakes on the 4.3 are bolted on different, going from auto to marine? So are the head bolts different or something? So wrap the runners under the manifold, like an LS. Schrodinger's cat used 115 octane, or we'll assume that it did. Intake bolts are at an angle versus straight down, going from one to the other. So are they for a vortex style head or something? How much difference do you think one UZ with an intercooler and a non-intercooler 2300? It'd be much better with an intercooler in it. Your charge temperatures would be down like 100 to 150 degrees, so it'd be a lot better. Let's say 2 more minutes. Intercoolers make power. Intercoolers make safety. Intercoolers make everything better. Everything in life is better with an intercooler. And then also E85. I didn't do my Spirit RT poll tonight. That's okay. 4G2 is better. Yeah, we have 110 people here and 73 thumbs up. Although people are leaving now because I told people that I gave them the 2-minute warning. The Hypho 1.5 from a CRX. Can I swap the head, intake, and fuel system to my 99 LX 1.5 Civic? If not, you're gonna have to look up a Honda interchange on that. That high fuel is a D series engine, but I don't know if all the oiling is the same. Why do you want to put that on your 199 Civic? Why wouldn't you just swap the whole motor? The boss. For horsepower equals torque times RPM over 5252. Okay, and on that note, it's time for me to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. Thanks again to Oliver for helping me with the truck. It's a night and day difference driving. It actually doesn't want to wander around and change lanes arbitrarily. The brakes actually work. When you push down on the back of the truck, it doesn't just bounce around like this. it's better like in every way. So let's have our fingers crossed, and hopefully it will also tow even better. I'll see you guys all tomorrow.